Friends, if you don't mind my asking, what goes overboard for you? Hey, it's Pastor Mike from Fellowship Church. Always love to connect with you midweek. Hope you're doing well. Hope you're drying out after this past weekend's rain, and hope the Lord is just blessing you in your life and guiding you. Question for you for today: what goes overboard in your life? Sounds like kind of a strange question. Let me set that up a little bit. If you've ever read through the book of Acts in the Bible, you know it's the story of the early church. Much of the book of Acts is the story of a man named Paul. We call him the Apostle Paul, and Paul is out on missionary journeys. He's preaching about Christ, he's converting people to the way, he's planting churches. It's the story of the Apostle Paul. Well, one of those stories in Paul's life must have been a really challenging story for him. It's Acts 27. Go ahead and read that this week. It'll take you less than 5 minutes. It's a story of Paul taking a little bit of a boat ride, but not a boat ride like you're familiar with. They were going to set sail from one port and eventually make it to another port. Paul was actually a prisoner on this voyage, and as you might expect, when they were out in the Mediterranean, boy, the storms came up. And the sailors began fearing whether or not they could successfully complete the voyage. At one point in time, they started throwing some of the cargo overboard. And then a little later on, they started throwing some of the food overboard. Eventually, Paul says, they even threw the ship's tackle overboard, meaning they were throwing ropes and anchors and other things overboard just because they were that scared of dying out there trying to lighten the ship. Eventually, the ship crash lands into a beach. Everyone on board is safe. Praise the Lord. But here's a question for you today. When the storms of life come up, when the waves rise, when you begin fearing about the successful completion of some portion of your life's voyage, what do you throw overboard first? For them, they threw cargo overboard. Must have been interesting how they decided how to do that, because some of that cargo might have been labeled fragile, some of it might have been expensive, but they threw all the cargo overboard. Eventually then, they threw the food overboard. Apparently the food was more important than the cargo. Finally, they threw the ship's tackle overboard. That was pretty important stuff. I wonder what happens in your life when you start facing life's storms. How do you decide what order to throw things overboard? And what does that say about your priorities? And here's why this matters today. In the course of the past year and a half, you and I faced what we might call today a global pandemic, the COVID virus. You and I have been forced to maybe put some things overboard. We've had to establish some priorities. We've had to say what's really important to us and what's not so important. And maybe this pandemic even took away some things that you thought were important. But friends, you learned how to put some things overboard. You learned how to decide what's really important for you. And as the pandemic has receded, you've been really excited to recapture some things that matter to you. Friends, every now and then, it's good for us to spend a little time thinking about, so if I have to start doing without some things in this life, what goes overboard for me? And in what order do I start pitching things overboard? What really matters in my life? What's most important to me? And what do I really not want to do without? Not a bad exercise every now and then for those of us who are followers of Jesus Christ as well. Friends, may you be thinking a little bit these days about what goes overboard for you. Hope you have a wonderful week. To know that we love you and we're praying for you. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.